So getting clients through content is easy once you know the systems, and it's, near enough impossible without them. So in this video, I will explain every system you need to start landing content on autopilot. And I regularly use these systems myself and teach them to students in my paid community, Modern Maker, who have collectively made 3.4 million with them so far. So if you're interested, the link to the community is in the description below. Now let's get cooking. So here's some of the student wins on the website, straight from our Slack, WhatsApp, groups over the time of people and students that have actually used these in order to get the wins, to refine their content, and basically dial in the system that gets buyers to sort of start perking at them and not viewers, right? Because a lot of people go wrong with, attracting viewers instead of buyers. And that's where that sort of thing should be. So that's what I want to talk about in this video today. So on that note, let's get rolling. I'm sure there's been like multiple instances where you've sat down at your desk and just sat there unsure of what to do next. You're strapped in for ideas and inspiration, and, for the life of you can't get out there. And I too was the same. Like when I started my journey on LinkedIn in 2022, I can't tell you, it was horrid. Like I used to sit with an empty canvas and like scratch my head for hours. I tried to keep a swipe file of like all these big creators, but I ended up, instead of like modeling them, I ended up copying them. And this felt so inauthentic to me because I had so much to share, but I couldn't for the life of me put it on paper. So then I created a system that worked for myself called the TSSI. It inspired me to get out there and be as authentic as I could to myself by using something that I didn't sort of invent, but in content we've got top, middle, and bottom funnel content. Top funnel content is sort of content that tells stories. You've got your how-to posts that literally attracts people. Then mid funnel is what nurtures people. So that could be like your how I do something, or like breakdowns and processes. And then bottom funnel content is what converts people. So those are like case studies and testimonials. So I was inspired by that. So I know it's really simple. But I created the TSSI because it sat better with me, since, it was something that for me was easier to explain and understand. And it helped me grow my account from 1,000 followers to 46,000 followers, and also sign 250 clients. And the best part is now I write my weekly content and emails in under 1 hour every week. But obviously that comes with practice, because I've written for myself, for clients through. But, students have told me they'll sort of come out of these blockages and write an entire week's worth in a couple of hours. So the mistake that they make is not having a content system, right? Like I've spoken to hundreds of coaches. They're sort of throwing spaghetti at a wall and they're unable to piece two and two together. But by having a content system, they're able to be consistent, but it's a content system that attracts buyers and not viewers, right? So essentially, the TSSI framework is really simple. It's comprised of teach, show, share, and invite content. When we teach, which is pillar one, we basically teach someone something that's locked inside our head, right? Like I tend to write content where I teach people how to create offers, just as an example, or I teach people how to write a post. Then the second pillar is show content. Show content basically demonstrates how you do something in your day-to-day. This is my favorite one because we collect content and we don't create content. So by showing you what I do, that sort of demonstrates competence, and that can be a content block where you say how I do something. So for example, how I set up my onboarding process, how I closed a client, how I wrote a conversion post, and in that process of demonstrating, some of my success comes from simply demonstrating how I take a lead and turn them into a customer and then into a client with a very simple funnel. And that is unique to the process, like almost like the BTS, you know, the behind the scenes of how you do something. One of my most successful YouTube videos here has been showing people how I write posts. You know, I've written 7 posts in 33 minutes. Just hit record and I show. Now, pillar 3 is share. So share content is everything that is non-related to business, your interests, your hobbies, your philosophies, your values, your beliefs, which show people who you are, right? Because people buy you. So in my world, I tend to share a lot about my 5 pets. I've got 2 cats and 3 dogs. I share my love for music, my love for watermelon, sort of the Mediterranean culture, and that shows people who you are, and they start buying into that journey. Now you can break, let's say, the share content into limited buckets, right? Like I don't need to share that I had a coffee and then went for a run and then, you know, the full day-to-day stuff, but like you pick selectively. And when it comes to like philosophies, for example, on LinkedIn, I always share how I get clients with Google Docs, and my philosophy is you don't need sales calls. And people sort of argue with that or side with that. Then the 4th pillar is invite content. Now, why is it called invite? It is called invite because these are sort of case studies or testimonials or client results that you can use and then invite somebody off the platform and into somewhere else. So I invite people from my LinkedIn to join my newsletter, or I invite them to watch a YouTube video. I invite them for a free lead magnet. I could ask them to DM me something in exchange for a conversation, you know. So we've got teach, show, share, and invite. The problem with systems is that sometimes we can get lost in them, you know, making our content seem robotic and hard to build connection with. And I myself fell into the trap of following the system to the bone, where everything had to be like granular and I couldn't rear off in any direction. But then I started sharing a lot more off-the-cuff stories about my experience as a jazz musician, a burnt-out agency owner, the debt I had to pay off when they took away our childhood home, how I rebought my mother a house and then paid off all the debts. And not only did I build a tribe of people who aligned with my ethos and my values, but I built a lot more trust by showing the good, the bad, and the ugly. So mistake number 2 is not being authentic in your content. You know, people buy who you are before buying what you do. And people should know that person, because at the end of the day, there's so many business coaches, so many mindset coaches, so many accountants, finance experts out there. I want to buy the person, right? So I always tell my students the reason why I picked my accountant is not because he's going to do the accounts, but the factor was because we support the same basketball team, right? So we had a common interest. The work is going to be done anyway. So share personal stories that will resonate with your audience. Don't be afraid to get vulnerable. And you can lead with your audience's pain points, but sprinkle in your personality and your personal stories, because then they start to relate to themselves through your own stories. And this builds trust and shows that you understand them. You know, for example, like one of my best posts was the story of how I left my full-time job in the UK to come to Cyprus because my father was unwell and I wanted to come and support him. You know, all having very little savings and worked from my now wife's parents' attic. So this is actually the post I wanted to show you, because you can see it got like 655 likes, 20,000 impressions. There's me in my now wife's attic with the doggies and the cats and how it all started. And this was just pure, vulnerable, authentic storytelling, right? Like I start off with, in 2019, I left my 28.5K job in London in exchange for a 14K job in Cyprus because my parents were divorced twice now, separate marriages, and they moved to different cities. We lost our childhood home because of the debt, and I wanted to be close to my dad. So I lived and worked from my girlfriend's parents' attic with no office, 5 pets, 1 bed, a backpack, a laptop, and a family. And I started sort of designing and coding websites for this casino company 9 to 5 when the pandemic hit. And then my 9 to 5 became a 5 to 9. And then a 5 to a 3 a.m. because I spent every minute of the day trying to build my agency and then founding Modern Maker, my community. So I'm sort of running through all of the story, like, you know, the cold emails, the rejections, the unpaid months, and the fuckery that came with it. But, you know, I sort of then break down what happened when I scaled the agency. We made our first 350K. We got Sports and FIFA and Tony and Guy and Theo Hendricks as clients, you know, sort of shifted outwards, and then show that I bought my mother and my sisters a new apartment, founded Modern Maker, and now at the time I had 35 students. So basically these are the stories that build trust with people and get somebody to shake their world and actually feel you, because in a sea of regurgitated content, you have to show your true colors, right? And when you're authentic, your audience will see you as someone who genuinely understands them, not, you know, come across as just another salesperson. But, you know, you can do everything I've just said, but if you don't fix this next mistake, it'll all be for nothing. And in my journey, I was talking to coaches, consultants, solopreneurs, agency founders, fitness gurus, restaurant owners, SaaS companies, design teams, you know, and making content for everybody without a specific person in mind created very low market resonance. And it didn't really speak to anybody at the end of the day. What ended up happening was I was getting lots of viewers, praise, you know, platitude type of responses, but I made little to no money. Versus when I shifted to talking to coaches looking to make 10K a month through writing, then people would come to me and say, hey, Jacob, you know, I felt like you were speaking straight at me, to all my pains, all my wants, fears, and my aspirations. So the third mistake is not targeting the correct audience. Finding the right audience starts with mapping out what I just said, right? Like their pains, their wants, their fears, and their aspirations. Pains and wants are usually short term, and then fears and aspirations are long term. And it comes to understanding the sophistication levels of your market. And you know, you need to know who they are before you can craft the content that they need to hear and feel in their bones, right? Your content will never reach that success level you want, like, unless you do this sort of front end work first. So without it, you're just sort of throwing spaghetti at a wall. Now, if you know who you're speaking to, you can speak directly to them about the exact problems they have, make the problem sort of awareness loop happen, and then create content around fixing that problem. And inside Modern Maker, our community, I always talk about dog whistling, right? Like we whistle at high frequencies that only our dream client can hear. We don't want to spread broadly. Now, this is what happens behind the content which actually leads to sales, and it all starts with mapping out who you're actually helping. Thank you for listening today. You know, if you found this video useful, check out my paid community Modern Maker with the link in the description below. And also to learn how to map out your target audience properly, I'm gonna drop a video in the description where I explain this in more detail. This is the video with a method that gets you clients instantly. It will also be down below, and really excited to have you on board. Thank you and more power to you.